Every empire believed the same thing. Every general swore by it. Every Wall Street textbook repeats it too. This day, that money wins wars. They were all wrong. In 1513, a disgraced Florentine politician, tortured, exiled, and broke, wrote a book that would terrify kings for 500 years. In it, he made one claim that almost no one talks about. One idea so counterintuitive that even his enemies couldn't refute it. Money is not the sinew of war. Good soldiers are. Today, we're going to prove he was right and show you exactly why this changes everything. Most people know Machiavelli as the guy who said, "The ends justify the means." But that's a caricature. The real Machiavelli was Florence's Secretary of State for 14 years. He negotiated with popes, emperors, and warlords. He watched armies win and lose, and obsessively studied why. When the Medici threw him out and had him tortured, he had nothing left but his notebooks. So he wrote everything down, and in those notebooks, buried between chapters on cruelty and fortune, was this: "It is not gold, but good soldiers that ensure success in war." For gold alone will not procure good soldiers, but good soldiers will always procure gold. Niccolo Machiavelli, Discourses on Livy. Here's what he actually meant. And it's not complicated, it's just uncomfortable. Money is inert. It sits in a vault. It does nothing by itself. You need people to spend it, move it, fight for it. But here's the trap. If your people fight only because you pay them, mercenaries, hired guns, outsourced armies, the moment the money runs low, or the moment a better offer comes along, they're gone. Machiavelli saw this destroy Florence again and again. The city hired the best mercenaries in Italy, spent fortunes, and kept losing because mercenaries don't die for your cause. But flip it. Give me a soldier who believes, who has something to fight for, who is trained, loyal, and capable. That soldier generates resources. He takes territory. He holds ground. He brings back gold. Capability creates wealth. Wealth does not create capability. Capability creates resources. Resources do not create capability. Machiavelli had a word for mercenaries. He called them useless and dangerous. Not just ineffective, actively dangerous, because a hired army has divided loyalty. Their allegiance is to whoever pays most. They perform just well enough to keep the contract. Sound familiar? Before we get to the modern parallels, let's watch this play out in three of history's most decisive conflicts. Carthage was the wealthiest city in the ancient world. Their silver mines in Spain produced more metal than most nations see in a century. They could hire any army they wanted, and they did. Hannibal crossed the Alps with 90,000, hired soldiers from across Africa, Spain, and Gaul. He crushed Rome at Trebia, at Lake Trasimene. At Cannae, the worst defeat in Rome history. Rome was broke. Senators melted their own jewelry to fund the next campaign. So Carthage won, right? Rome won. Decisively. Permanently. Here's why. Hannibal's army was brilliant, but it was hired. After every victory, soldiers demanded more pay. They had no reason to push harder than their contract required. Rome's legions were citizens, farmers, fathers. Men who knew that if Rome fell, everything they had fell with it. They didn't fight for a paycheck. They fought for survival and meaning. Scipio didn't defeat Carthage by outspending them. He outbelieved them. Hannibal never lost a battle. He lost the war. The difference was morale, not money. This one hits different if you're American. Britain commands the most professional, best-funded military force in human history. They have the Royal Navy. They have Hessian mercenaries, the best hired soldiers money can buy. Their budget dwarfs anything the colonies could imagine. Washington's army? Starving at Valley. Forge. No boots. No blankets. Soldiers literally wrapping their feet in rags. His treasury was empty. By every financial metric, the revolution should have been crushed in 18 months. It lasted 8 years, and the farmers won. The Hessians, those expensive German mercenaries, crossed the Delaware on Christmas night and surrendered to men who hadn't eaten properly in weeks. Why? Because when it got hard enough, the mercenaries calculated their odds and chose surrender. Washington's men calculated something different. They had nowhere to go back to. Their homes were occupied. Their cause was on the line. Their children's futures were the stakes. Machiavelli, writing 260 years earlier, could have predicted every beat of this story. Mercenaries are disunited, ambitious, undisciplined, and faithless, bold among friends, cowardly among enemies. Machiavelli, the Prince, Chapter 12. The United States spent in today's dollars over $840 billion on the Vietnam War. They had helicopters, napalm B-52, bombers, and the most sophisticated military technology ever assembled. North Vietnam had bicycles, tunnels, and absolute conviction. The Viet Cong had no air force, no navy. A fraction of the firepower, but they had something American commanders kept undervaluing in their spreadsheets. They had a reason. Defense Secretary McNamara ran the war like a business optimization problem. Kill ratios, supply metrics, dollar per engagement efficiency. He was measuring money. He forgot to measure meaning. And here's the brutal Machiavellian irony. The more America spent, the more it demonstrated to the Vietnamese that this was a resource war. And in a resource war against an enemy, fighting for survival, the side with more resources to lose loses more. When one side is fighting for money and the other is fighting for survival, survival wins. Now, what does any of this have to do with your life? WeWork raised $47 billion in valuation. Tyrannos raised nearly $1 billion. Quibi raised $1.75 billion from Hollywood's elite. All three had more money than they could spend. All three collapsed, not from lack of funding, but from lack of something Machiavelli would immediately identify. Capable people with genuine belief in a real mission. WeWork's employees were hired guns. Well paid, yes. But when the company's mission turned out to be a myth, they left. Or worse, they stayed and did nothing. Meanwhile, look at the companies that survived on nothing. Airbnb almost died 3 times before their Series A. Brian Chesky sold cereal boxes to make payroll. His co-founders coded through the night, not because they were paid to, but because they had no other option and complete belief. Capability, belief, tenacity, then money followed. Fund the mission after you've built the soldiers. Not before. Every manager has tried it. The team is underperforming, so you raise salaries. Add bonuses, better benefits. It doesn't work, and Machiavelli explains exactly why. You've hired mercenaries, people whose primary loyalty is to compensation. And raising compensation doesn't change what they are. It just raises the price. You pay for the same division of loyalty. Steve Jobs famously paid early Apple employees less than they could get elsewhere. And they worked 80 hours a week, joyfully. Because he offered something money can't replicate. The belief that they were building something that would change the world. And they were right. Jobs understood Machiavelli's principle intuitively. Get the right soldiers, people who fight for the cause, and the gold follows. Try to buy soldiers with gold first, and you get mercenaries. Hire for belief, train for capability, pay to keep in that order. Let me make this uncomfortably personal. You have goals. Maybe a business, maybe a career change, maybe something you've been building on. Decide for 2 years. And at some point, you told yourself, when I have more money, I'll go all in. When I have more resources, I'll start. When the conditions are right. That's the mercenary mindset? You're waiting to be funded before you fight. Machiavelli would tell you, you're looking at it backwards. The people who change things don't wait for resources. They develop capabilities so ferocious that resources have no choice but to follow. Washington didn't wait for money. He fought, and France funded him. The early Christians didn't wait for temples. They met in homes. And built the largest institution in human history. Bezos didn't wait for warehouse money. He shipped books from his garage. In every case, capability first, resources second. You don't need more money. You need better soldiers, starting with yourself. Let's be honest about what Machiavelli wasn't saying. He wasn't saying money doesn't matter. He was saying money is downstream of capability. It is the consequence, not the cause. Rome needed money to maintain its legions, but the legions came first. Washington needed French financing, but his army's resilience earned that financing. Amazon needed venture capital, but Bezos's obsessive capability attracted it. In every case, the soldiers created the gold. The gold never created the soldiers. So here's the question Machiavelli is really asking you 500 years later. What are you using as your excuse? Are you waiting for funding before you start the company? That's mercenary thinking. Are you waiting for the right team before you commit fully? That's mercenary thinking. Are you building a skill set with one eye always on what it pays? That's, you guessed it, mercenary thinking. The soldier who wins doesn't ask, what's in it for me before every battle? He asks what must be done and trusts that the reward follows victory. Machiavelli wasn't writing a manual for tyrants. He was writing a survival guide for people who refused to be victims of circumstance. The sinew of war, the real sinew is will. Skill, belief, preparation. Money is what? You accumulate after you've become worth accumulating it. Machiavelli died broke and forgotten. His ideas outlasted every empire he watched rise and fall. That's what good soldiers do. Be the soldier.